Okay, welcome everyone. This is actually the first time that I've done a pre-recorded podcast, usually with JP, who you heard with his chocolatey voice in the intro for me. Thank you, JP, for doing that. Usually I'm live with JP on Ever Beyond Radio, but we're trying a new format here, and I'm actually going to do the podcast format, which is great because this will enable me to actually bring in some guests, some honored guests that I can bring in and speak with. Today, actually, we will be speaking with Barry Littleton. He is a near-death experiencer and contactee, among many other things. And I look forward to hearing more about his experiences today. And so for this podcast, which is called Expansion at the moment, I will be speaking about Ayurvedic medicine. And for those of you who are not yet familiar with what Ayurvedic medicine is, it's a traditional science that Ayurveda translates as life knowledge. So it's a very ancient science and ancient medicine, originally from India. And it entered my heart maybe about 12 years ago. And basically, it is a modality and system of healing that views humankind as completely merged and no different from the natural world. We are all the same. We are all of the same essence. So the natural world and human beings are of the same essence. And we use the natural world to promote our own healing. Now, one of the main concepts is the idea of working with food, how we nourish ourselves, and how healthy our digestion is. And that's not just digestion of food, but it's digestion of anything we take through the senses. So through our sense of sight, our sense of hearing, our sense of touch, our sense of taste, and all this more subtle senses, what we take in, we're digesting. And so before we bring Barry in, I just wanted to put this out there, put this question out there for everyone as kind of a contemplation. Some of the listeners here may already have an understanding about the effects that media has on us as a whole. And so for contemplation, I just want everyone to think about what if everyone, and I mean every person living here that was connected to media, television, news, if we all turned off for 1 week, what would that look like? What would happen? What would begin to happen? It might even just be a day that we would need. But what if we all at the same time, we just turned off for a week? I imagine some great things and great shifts could start to occur. If you think about Ayurveda and how we have this understanding of digesting through the senses, think about what you're digesting when you take in certain images and concepts that we get through the media. So, just going to leave you with that. And basically what we're going to do in this podcast today and in the future is to explore ideas of expansion of consciousness. And I have spent several years just doing listening. Let's just say that. I've spent several years listening. And part of that listening has been seeking out people that I feel have some very important things to talk about in this day and age. And one of these people is a guest that I have here today. His name is Barry Littleton. And Barry will be able to give a little brief intro of himself, but what I've heard through his interviews with several people, quite a few people actually, on YouTube and elsewhere, is that he's a near-death experiencer, and he's also a contactee. And from what I understand, and Barry, certainly please correct me if I'm wrong, is that he actually had abilities and contacts with other beings, higher dimensional beings, extraterrestrial beings, even before his near-death experience. And we'll get more into that today. I think that would be really great to explore. I have a list of questions, and we may or may not get to all of them. But Barry, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you, Chelynn?
I'm great.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, of course. And thanks for taking the time. I appreciate that as well. So, could you talk a little bit about now your near-death experience? You experienced that as an adult. Is that correct?
Yes. About 6 years ago, actually.
Okay, so fairly recently.
Yeah. Enough to where I can say, had it not been for that, I probably wouldn't be speaking out and talking publicly the way I am now. So, they're kind of correlated in that way.
So what prompted you through that experience? How did that encourage you to speak out? Because I do understand that it's incredibly difficult to be speaking about any kind of esoteric subject for the fear of being shunned. So why did that push you to that edge of being able to speak out?
It was a few things. One is that I had died. I had went through several windows in a car accident, and I've sustained several catastrophic traumatic brain injuries. And they said I'd be most likely devoid of long-term life memories and some short-term memories. And that was not the case. So that's one thing that kind of spawned me to come forward, that I didn't forget any of these experiences or my life is definitely a blessing. So that's one thing that kind of had me come forward. The other thing would be my mother, just before she had passed, after the accident, had told me that I was supposed to do something. And I think it might have something to do with this. You know what I mean? And it's like the synchronicities came forward, and then a number of people came forward in my life, like Peter Maxwell Slattery, and telling me I should be on this show and stuff like that. First, I was like, man, you got to be kidding me. I don't even know this the guy that recovered from TBI and also had lifelong contact. Gee, that's not going to do a lot of...
Yeah, no, that is... I know. It's kind of like you're thrown into it. It sounds like once you made the choice to start speaking out, then the platforms were handed over to you to do that. Does it feel that way, or? Yes,
very much so. Because Peter, I don't know if you know him, but he's a really nice guy from Australia.
He seems it. Mm-hmm.
But he was very, let's say, persistent. He just kept saying, be on my show. And he's one of the main ones. He actually kind of did a deal and tricked me over at my friend's house into doing the first show I ever did. So
great.
It was a good thing. You know what I mean? But just trying to accept that for my whole life, I was a person very much in the shadows watching everything. I was having extreme contact, extreme experiences, and I was always looking for things to kind of verify that, or maybe even to give a frame of reference. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. So it sounds to me then some of your contactee experiences occurred even when you were a child. Is that correct?
Yes. It really started then, technically, quite a bit at a different level, though.
Right. Okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the encounters that you had growing up? Do you feel okay doing that, and then I can get into some of my questions?
Yeah, sure. It started off, I used to have a playmate that would show up sometimes, and just every now and again, and he was very odd. And, I couldn't put that together at first. Maybe this wasn't a normal person, but he was a telepath. And I'm a telepath like so many people right now that are awake that don't actually get a chance to exercise that. But he was capable of this, and I didn't put it together that maybe this wasn't completely a normal person.
Yes, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Did he just appear to you, or would he actually walk up to you from a physical space?
He came up on a bike one time, and sometimes he would walk up. One time he came up on a bike.
Okay.
And he, I would do little weird things like, as a kid, a lot of people remember this, like, there's water that runs along the gutter, the curb.
Yes.
That goes down the street. And I used to like to make little dams and mud dams to try to stop that water, because I had this notion that somehow that water was going to flood the world,
Yes, sure, of course.
So he would pull up, and he's helping me make those dams and doing stuff like that. So I thought he was a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In terms of he was playing with me. But then I asked him questions like, what school do you go to? There's 2 schools by where I lived, and he didn't go to either one of them. I'm just here visiting family. And was saying stuff like that. And then I was always well supervised, but he would conveniently come and hang out for just a few minutes that my brother or my father or somebody just wasn't right there on me. And then when they come right back, and he suddenly had to leave. You know what I mean?
Yes, did he appear to you as a child, or did he look different?
At first he did, because of his size.
Okay.
His size and the fact that, once again, he was playing with me, and I can swear to you that stopping that water was just as important to him as it was to me.
I could
so in
see
that way, I thought that, he was a child also, but maybe a few years older than me, but not very much.
Sure.
But now I could see it. Then later on, in a different experience, I found that to be not the case, and I saw him in a different way.
Right. Yeah. So was he also learning from you then? Is that what you're implying? That he was also learning about humanity or childhood, or was he just more trying to fit in with your experience of living?
I think it's more that a lot of these beings are trying to keep us awake and keep us from falling asleep and to keep the evolution going forward here. And I think it also has a lot to do with our genetic line and our bloodlines and who and what we really are that we can't remember, not just physically, but spiritually. A lot of us incarnate here completely devoid of soul life memories. But we know that we've incarnated here before. We know our souls are immortal, but yet it's like you don't benefit that fully when you're here, and you're given a bunch of crap. Why that is, it's a school, it's a prison. But ultimately, we don't know. So I think on the conscious level, a lot of this could be, sometimes it's even our own selves that might be reaching out across time, and there's other times that other places you've incarnated on the soul level. And right now it's kind of cool because we've got the thing that like Mary Rodwell and everybody's doing with the star seeds. So many young people that are incarnating right now with not just past life memories like I had, but past life memories off terrestrial, off planet.
Yes.
So that's things that are changing. I think that's maybe the divine field reaching out to us a little bit, and maybe that chance for humanity to save itself. Because I know a lot of this is about the planet, even more than humanity. Yes,
I agree. We're in a pretty intense time right now. I guess I'm going to go reverse order some of my questions. Well, this goes with what you were just talking about. How do you feel the consciousness of humankind is at the moment? Like, how do you feel we're doing as a collective? Do you think like we're in trouble? Do you think most people are still heavily asleep? Like, what do you think? It's okay if it's a little dark and gloomy. It's fine. Just say whatever you feel.
I think humanity's in serious trouble right now.
Okay.
And I think time is kind of running out.
Okay.
And I say that because right now we're at a point where when you have, even if you deal with like Michio Kaku's system of type 1, type 2, type 3 civilizations, we're about to become a type 1 civilization from a type 0, which means we're no longer using fossil fuels to destroy our own planet. When we start focusing on the parent star as our main power source.
Okay.
So just in that change, there's a good chance to destroy yourselves.
Okay. Why is there a good chance? And what is a type 1 civilization? What are the like characteristics behind a type 1 civilization? Just for listeners that don't know.
Like I said, type 1 would be, we're type 0 now, means we're using fossil fuels. Type 1 means that you're actually using the parent star, the sun, as power source, the primary power source for most things on the planet. So you're starting to tap into 0 point energy there.
Okay.
And so that would be, sorry, I should turn that off.
It's okay.
So that would be the next step for that right there. For us right now, I think that the problem would be how we could possibly eradicate ourselves is through the technology. The advance of technology without the spirit involved. That's where you start getting the nuclear weapons, the artificial intelligence. I think a lot of these things could potentially be dangerous, so they have to be monitored with a much stricter guidelines. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I would say, but is it becoming exponentially more dangerous now that we're potentially moving more into 0 point energy use or solar, even the use of solar energy? Like, why would it be more dangerous now at the crux between going from fossil fuels energy to 0 point? What's the danger at this juncture? that you see?
Well, the danger I'm seeing is the opposition that's facing 0 point energy.
Okay.
And, we can all see that that's plainly very, very dark right now. That position is. That would be, I think the main problem. Because I see so many people right now, like I said, there's a lot of people that are waking up or born awake to where things are changing slightly also. Things are not so as confined as it was before. When I was younger and I was going through this stuff, man, there was nobody to talk to. I'm not that old. There was nobody to talk to at all until Art Bell started doing his show, and that wasn't until the 90s.
Right.
So that, so it's stuff like that right now. Like you and I are connecting, all the people that will hear this, and the amount of responses I'm getting for just coming out. And part of it was when I first started talking, I was kind of comfortable that no one was ever really going to hear it, I didn't think, and no one was going to pay attention.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I know. Yeah.
I was wrong on that.
You were wrong.
And it showed me a lot how many people, because by no means am I special. There's so many people having different experiences right now, that it's unreal. They're the people that aren't talking, that aren't on Ancient Aliens, that aren't speaking at these conferences. They're the people in the audience.
Right.
It's very interesting. So
it is interesting. No, that's great. No, it's all connecting. You've talked in other interviews about, I don't know, there seems to be this whitewashing in the UFO and contactee community to some extent, whereas people talk about seeing extraterrestrial beings, they all seem to have like pale white skin and that kind of thing. And you've brought up the really important observation that there are melanin dominant beings. I would love for you to speak about, this is kind of a huge topic, but I think it's so important right now. Like, have you experienced racism since you're an African American man in the U.S., or if you're not African American and of some other heritage, please do let me know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, what have been your experiences, if any, of racism in the UFO or contactee circles? We'll start there.
Okay, it's very interesting, and this doesn't apply to the whole, but it's so interesting because you've got the UFO community and you've got the AIDS community. And it seems that, a lot of people are fine. It's wonderful when I say I'm a contactee experiencer. Oh, that's great. But they don't like it when I say I'm black. And they don't like it when I talk about being black and melanin dominant. And I'm pro-black, make no mistake about it. But I'm also pro-God, which means I'm pro-people. So this, where you start dealing with galactic intelligences, a lot that aren't even physical, you definitely got to get past the racist thing to a certain way. But it's not addressed. And when you start going in these like, not just you start looking at the conferences or looking at these fields, you see no melanin dominant people, whether it's black people, Hispanics, Chinese, or Asians. You don't see a lot of that. You don't see the kind of disparity. And then even worse, as a contactee, when I started I was looking desperately, looking in the media for trying to find other frames of references, and I'm looking for what? Someone that looks similar to me. Yeah. And the only thing I could find was Barney Hill. There's another gentleman, Curtis, can't remember his last name, but he was kind of a military brother. Okay. But those are the only two people I could even find. And my experiences weren't like that. So, I could have me even doubting some things like, oh no, can I not remember everything because my mind got wiped, like Barney Hill, or what? You know what I mean? Something like that. So that's kind of where I've experienced something like that. Give you another example real quick. Jimmy Church, I met him at his City Ranch about a month ago.
Yes, I heard that interview. Very good. Yeah.
Oh, cool. The one on Fade to Black, the very first thing, and he asked me when I got done speaking publicly while I was still up there, he said, how come he's not seeing a lot of black people doing this, and why is that, and how did I feel about that? And it was very good. And when he addressed that on that radio show, some people got mad at him. A lot of people got mad.
Okay, why did they get mad?
Too much, and,
Why did they get mad again? Can you tell me why they got mad?
They said that he spent too much time talking about it, and we needed to move on. And to my awareness, we spent maybe 5 minutes talking about that, and that's a major problem.
Definitely.
If you're going to these places and you want to hear people that are contactees, it needs to be the whole thing needs to be kind of expressed. You know what I mean? And that leads me into also the other part of your question, which is Black extraterrestrials. I'd encountered somebody who was known and dominant that I call a charter. And that made me even more curious about that, trying to see exactly how many groups is it that are ethnic that we don't hear about. Mm-hmm. Groups like Mex, groups like that, things that we're not hearing about. So that's kind of took me into that and wanted to explore that along with my racial heritage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's really important. So do you feel that racism has been encouraged to keep people disconnected and thus under control?
Oh, definitely. Very much so. Very much so.
It's kind of,
One of the videos I did on my channel was people got really upset about it. It was the ISIS Papers by Dr. Cress Welsing. And she does some things that's called the Cress Color Theory of Confrontation, which is basically how a white supremacist type of racist structure we have limits us all. And certain things that are giving not just auto-suggested, but also visually, that actually impede the psyche of a lot of people, especially Black males. So it's things that, and you start dealing with the separation that's done there. It's all about divide and conquer, because I met so many people now that are really what they claim to be. They're very awake, and they're operating on a different level that is beyond that, but yet when you bring this up, they're not trying to bury their head in the sand and act like it doesn't exist and say, oh, there are no colors and things like that, when obviously these groups are completely skewed. What we hear information-wise is completely skewed.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's important. Can you give an example or two of some of the visual imagery that's been used to impede the psyche of people as a whole in terms of fostering this idea of racism?
Well,
do you have any examples? Yeah, I'd love to hear, like, from either your perspective or hers, the woman that you just referred to.
One would be some things that, well, for her, Dr. Welsing, she went some things that I found very interesting, which is like the phallus structures in Washington, D.C., how they look like these white phalluses. And then by the same token, as a Black man, like I could grab a Playboy and start looking through it, magazine after magazine, and most of the girls look just alike.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Man, we're the ones that look like me. We're the ethnic ones.
Sure.
That's one way. So that's the way that starts skewing what we're seeing, right? Kind of definitely influencing it. Another way of thinking is called Willie Lynch syndrome is another one, which was something that was done during slavery, which was to divide the darker men against the lighter men, and then put the women against both. Yeah. And right now, I can still see my people and other races still suffering from something quite similar to that. So that's a way of definitely just holding us back. When the truth is, on this planet, we should all be openly exploring each other's culture, especially in an attempt to get some type of spiritual control over this planet and operate on a collective conscious level so we can join the galactic civilization. We're kind of like on the outskirts out here, man, in quarantine. That's not a joke. I mean, look at it. Even trying to be spiritual here on this planet is really hard. If you got kids, you got to go to work. By the time you get done with work and take care of your family, you have very little energy left for meditation, for spiritual pursuits.
Absolutely. That's actually a question I have for you. What daily practices do you have in place that help you to stay grounded, connected, centered, in health as much as you can? Do you have any practices that you can share with us that you do? And it can be something super simple.
Yeah, I try to do a daily protection.
Okay.
Because especially since going public, I mean, there's a lot of haters out there. There's a lot of people that don't like me because of either I said something or did something. I don't claim to be a light worker as much as I'm a warrior. You start shooting arrows at me, I'll shoot them back at you.
Yeah.
People don't like that. Oh, he doesn't like fucking guru. I don't claim to be a guru.
Sure.
But protection is one thing, okay? I always like to protect myself every day. Another is to just take some simple, deep breaths and to try to still my mind, not talk to myself, and just focus on the Creator. And I say that whatever people's perception of the creator is, it's personal. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? What they did, projecting love to that and trying to merge with that. That's one thing I try to do every day, right? Another thing I like to do a little sun gazing, just try to bring in a little energy from the sun when you're out there, kind of try to cleanse myself with some sunlight a little bit. Those are just some very simple things. You know, I try to every night when I go to bed, I'm going to remember my dreams. I'm going to be lucid in my dreams.
Yeah. No.
I'm not as gifted of a dreamer as some that
okay.
live a perfect, good life to have enough stored energy to have dream attention all the time.
Yes.
I better like the attention here.
Okay, so could you talk about, it could have been, I think you've had abilities, more subtle abilities before your near-death experience, but were they more awakened or enhanced after your near-death experience? Or, if you could give me a little bit of background around that. If you don't want to talk a lot about what your abilities are, that's okay.
I never have. I've never said I had abilities.
No.
I've never said that. I will say this. Perhaps I'm an example of what's called neuroplasticity. And in neuroplasticity is that when you have injured part of the brain, or your brain gets injured, or you start losing synaptics, you start having the neurons start forming different pathways so you can access that information. And I will say, I think that happened to me. And in a way that is, we take in so many quadrillion bits every millisecond around us that we have to filter half of that out anyway.
Sure.
And I think that maybe after the accident, I had the ability to filter some more things out and access those creative divine field neurons a little more. You know what I mean? Things anyone can do, and things I used to try to do through pranayama, breathing techniques. But I think that actually maybe in some ways the accident may have kind of
nudged.
Enhanced.
Kind of gave you a little nudge. It sounds like it has. I have heard about that near-death experiencers. I think they're actually doing blood lab work, DNA studies on people who've experienced a near-death encounter. Their DNA is actually altered after that experience. I don't know if you've heard about it. I'm sure you've heard about it, but there's actually scientific work being done right now so people who have had a near-death experience, when they've recovered, they get blood drawn, their DNA is whatever it's done to their DNA. It's brought into a lab and taken apart. They're noticing like there's either like extra bits of DNA or something's happening. Like there's a shift that's happening with some near-death experiencers. Does this ring a bell for you? Have you heard about this?
I'd heard something vaguely about that. Okay. And all I can say is, they ain't taking my blood. Just kidding.
I know.
But I had heard something about that. And, interestingly enough, I've been talking a lot with Ray Hernandez that runs the Free Foundation, Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research in Extraterrestrial Encounters.
Yep.
And, they've got a whole part of that survey that was about near-death experience among contactees, and it's very common.
Oh, it's common. Interesting.
The first UFO conference I went to, I've only been to two, and that was at SETI, when I've talked up there the last 2 years. But the first year I noticed it, as talking to a lot of the attendees, how many of the attendees had near-death experiences. Enough to where I got up there and spoke. I was saying, I've cracked this joke. I said, never before have I been around so many other people that have died.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Could you kind of guess as to a percent, for people who have had contactee, when we say contactee, we mean some kind of contact with an extraterrestrial being, higher dimensional being. What percent of people did you feel were near-death experiencers?
I bet you more than half.
Wow.
That's
a lot.
I bet you. And I could be off on that, but just based on what I experienced at SETI both years, the amount of people, and I asked, how many of you had near-death experiences? the ones that put their hand up, because a lot of these things happen to us, whether it's contact or NDE, and they do not just through our DNA, but they spawn our consciousness to go forward.
It's
to
true.
Keep expanding. You know what I mean? Keep changing and altering and expanding and evolving. It definitely starts that. And that's why a lot of the people, when you get away from the media influences, that's why I love what you said before we came.
Oops. You just blocked out there. Hold on. Okay, so we just had a little bit of a technical glitch there, and that is very common. That happens often, as people know. Whenever folks are talking about anything to do with anything esoteric or challenging the system, sometimes we get some technical difficulties. So Barry, you were just referring to, before we got cut off, you were talking about, referring to when I was talking about digesting everything through the senses, like the media, and if we could just shut off. Is there something you wanted to continue with, or shall we move on from that?
Well, actually, just when you were mentioning that and how much that the media actually is digested and all that, that is so correct, especially when thinking about autosuggestion, the first stage of hypnosis, and how that is already influencing people that already have abilities and are having encounters, how it's automatically letting the fear and things like that jump into a way that is influencing the type of encounter that they're having. The way that the divine field itself is interacting with our brain. That is being influenced by the media in the exact type of way you were saying, in several different ways, so that, and I'm seeing that right now, because the amount of people that are actually having positive lifetime contact far outweighs those of us that are having these abduction scenarios. I'm not discrediting those that have. There are those that have had that and horrible encounters. I'm not one of them, but my heart goes out to them. But it seems like that's all we hear about is them, and not the people like me and yourself and the people that have had positive things that have happened during contact.
Right.
So that's kind of, especially the healing factor of it. You're into healing a lot, and during my encounters, everything I've seen is about healing, about the healing of. It seems like they're more interested in the earth, and it's more about the earth than it is us to a certain degree, because I think we have a great deal more power than what we are aware of. Enough to destroy our own biosphere.
I know, it is true. It's true. We do have so much power, and it would make sense to me that other beings would be more interested to some degree in the earth. But again, through Ayurveda, we actually view humankind and the earth and everything around us as all the same, of the same substance, the same beingness. So earth, people, it's all kind of the same in a way, just a different vehicle, So you talked a little bit about your daily practices. In Ayurvedic medicine, we teach our patients to really incorporate practices, and some of them are somewhat mundane, like tongue scraping, which sounds really strange to a lot of people, but very simple practices to take care of the physical body. And then some other practices, you mentioned pranayama, like types of breath work, because that can really allow an individual, especially with daily practice, to begin to kind of lift the veils of what's before us, lift the illusion, and to get to something deeper. And it's really, what's exciting to me about Ayurveda is that it's for everybody. Like, everyone can practice these daily practices and better their health and also expand their consciousness. And in Ayurveda, the main reason why it exists is so that people can have longevity. A lot of us are like, oh, take me away now. But longevity on this earth and high health so that we can fulfill our dharma, or our path, our life path. And so I'm wondering for you, and for some people this understanding can change throughout their life. But for you, at this point in your life, what do you feel your life path and your mission is? I know you've talked about it a little bit, but could you expand upon that? Like, really, what do you feel like your purpose, your path is? You mentioned you kind of have this warriorship to yourself. You've talked about now coming out and speaking out as a contactee and a near-death experiencer, kind of being more in the public sphere. So for me, I see that as part of your path, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, a big part of it is that I've been here before, you know. I mean, not a whole lot of time, but I've incarnated here before. Mm-hmm. And the first time I was here, there was a stain of the people I was with, the beings I was with, as far as what things went down here. And what I remember is decisively different than a lot of the things I hear about now in the New Age circles and the things that we think is what happened in the past. And I think you'll find that a lot with the people that have true past life memories, you know, that things are just slightly different what I remembered. So a part of that is kind of trying to burn some of that karma, trying to make things at least equal it out to some degree. And there's a lot of us now that have, you know, come back and incarnated again that can speak to things like this, that possess knowledge from the past, knowledge from off planet. And I think it's, I'd like to see more people, if nothing else, come forward and start speaking. There's a few people like me that come forward and could have taken some arrows and stuff like that, a few beat downs, you know, but that way it makes it a lot more of a community to start talking. You know what I mean? There's people that talk like on my page that I know they're communicating between themselves, but that's part of, I think, once again, the divine field giving humanity a chance to survive. And that's what's going on right now, is that you have to be aware that the planet is going through a type of a pole shift, environmental changes that happen naturally anyway. Mm-hmm. And so that perhaps the consciousness is evolving, and that's the real shift going on. Mm-hmm. I hear some shifts described, but the real one is a shift in the consciousness and the control of this planet, the way it's controlled, the way it's, you know.
Right.
You know. So anyway, that's a big part of my deal here. And when I come forward, if nothing else, I know, because I'm not that intelligent. I'm not totally stupid, but I'm not that intelligent either. And some of these concepts that I've seen, like some of this technology on board these ships, like if I can see some of it, I can describe a little bit of it. There are real physicists and real scientists that can take that and run with it a lot farther than I could. You know what I mean? In a way that can really change things. And it's not just me. If you get a web of a bunch of us that have experienced these different technologies, these different higher beings, you'll get a whole lot of information will come out, instead of all of us being suppressed, information being suppressed, and worrying about ridicule of, you had contact, you're nuts, you know, that old stuff.
Yes, sure.
That's ways to keep people asleep, that's all that is.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I like what you're saying about you, because you've had an experience on a ship, you've witnessed, you observed technology, you may not know the inner guts, the inner workings of it, but you can provide a puzzle piece to someone else. That, for me, is a big part of the expansion of our consciousness, is the idea of collaboration and working laterally with each other rather than a hierarchy. That old paradigm, okay, clearly it's not working. It hasn't been working for a long time. As you said before, it just keeps people suppressed. So it's really not a matter of higher or lower intelligence. It's just a matter of people bringing in their observation, their connection, their unique way of experiencing life, and then collaborating and sharing with others. It's really pertinent. And I do like, you're definitely a warrior, like definitely, it's great. And it makes sense that you're kind of one of the first people, you know, if we look at a longer history of modern times, you're definitely in the front lines, kind of like a true warrior. You're definitely on the front lines. It's not glamorous at all. You have to deal with trolls. You have to deal with, you know, people attacking and that kind of thing.
I can admit something as you know, I can say that I found myself since the eclipse, everything kind of waved a little, and the amount of attacks went up.
Oh, it did. Interesting.
All the time, and I found myself letting my shields get drained just a little and getting a little snappy and sensitive with some people that I probably shouldn't have. I check and say, wait a minute, I'm touchy because I've been attacked so much. I'm seeing attacks coming where they're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's something there, and that's another way that people get really discouraged. because a lot of us do, but this stuff is like free. I mean, you're not going to get famous on it. It's not good for your career, not for mine. You know what I mean? So
sure.
So it's a matter of, that's discouraged because there's been something put on that anything spiritual, they're supposed to be like free, and people give this energy and they don't get any type of remuneration. So eventually they say screw it and just quit dealing with it.
Right, sure.
And it's all ways of control and suppression. It's very interesting. I mean, how much of what we exist in is not just control, but almost holographic in that way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about your understanding about the holographic universe, or how things work from a holographic perspective? We had a conversation recently and you brought that up, and I thought that was really fascinating. Can you talk about what that means?
Yeah, for me, it's going back to what they're calling right now is the quantum hologram theory of consciousness.
Okay.
And that's been made by a lot of those physicists and quantum physicists have kind of come up with that.
Mm-hmm.
And what that involves is actually like a wormhole itself. Like on the aperture of the wormhole, if you have something like, let's say, I throw my my wallet into the wormhole, there's going to be an exact duplicate of that wallet made on the surface of the aperture, okay? Huh. And then behind, that's what they call like a Mako, that is the information behind it. So it's exact copy. While the real wallet goes on through, that copy still exists on the surface, that quantum hologram. Mm. So that takes us into something else, which is beings that are capable of both going to another solar system by using a wormhole in a ship, or by actually using their dream body and just doing it that way. Either way, a copy of them is going to be on the surface of that wormhole, that quantum hologram. So that takes us into another deal. So if you have the civilizations that perhaps no longer exist, they would still exist in that quantum hologram and still be able to use it to access our brain to the divine field. And that, I'm trying to correlate that right now, the orbs. Everybody's into orbs right now. And we're seeing orbs a lot. Uh-huh. You go out to SETI, you see them all the time. People get pictures like all the time out there. Mm-hmm. But in reality, if you examine that phenomenon a little closer, and what a lot of the witnesses are saying, they're saying, well, I saw some type of a being in there. Uh-huh. I saw a being inside of that orb. That is the quantum hologram to a degree. Beings using that type of knowledge to actually communicate with us.
So are they like mini wormholes, or those little orbs?
There are micro wormholes as well.
Oh, that's different. Okay.
But I think that maybe we're dealing with beings that can kind of condense their dream body into like a sphere also. Okay. And that becomes like the same thing. I think it's all interconnected.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I have heard about the orb phenomena being because entities from a different dimension can't retain their form in this type of density, so it coalesces into an orb kind of shape. Mm-hmm. That's what I've heard. I don't know.
Yeah, a protection.
It would be protective, I guess. Yeah. Can you recall some major moments of your consciousness expanding? Like, were there specific moments that you can recall?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of them.
Oh, yeah, talk about a few. I'm curious.
I had just a few months ago at that ranch out there.
Oh, you said he. Okay.
I had another one last year out there when actually I saw something connected to holograms and made me even deal with... I thought I had a knowledge of the holographic principle, but I was out there on that ranch, and about 3 a.m., I was talking to somebody, and we witnessed this ship, and it comes down and suddenly we can see through this mountain, and it meant that there was a certain amount of this mountain that was a hologram. And it'd be one thing if I was just up there looking at this myself and was insane or something, but that type of delusion is not shared. Somebody else is watching it. So that to me made me say, why on earth did I have to just witness that?
Sure.
It was.
Was that of the portal opening in the mountain? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it wasn't a portal. It just the ship had went down, and we could suddenly see it through this mountain when it went so far down.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it was technically impossible unless what we were seeing was partially holographic.
Okay. And so was that the ship that was holographic or the mountain?
The mountain appeared to be holographic. I mean, to a point of where I had to try to figure out why I had experiences. I've been having experiences my whole life.
Yeah.
And thought that maybe I was past the point of ones quite like that. That totally stopped my perception. Like, wow, something like that. But it made me delve more into like the holographic principle, and to where even I found out when I look at that book, Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. He wound up that he was an experiencer, a contactee. He was a client of Bud Hopkins for like years. So he was saying actually that book was a download from the beings he was dealing with. That just wasn't publicized because it would have discredited the work. Yeah,
that's so interesting. That puts another piece together for me, so thank you for that. So who do you think created this hologram then? Do you think it's our higher selves? And when I'm talking specifically your experience at Mount Adams of the mountain appearing holographic with the ship kind of behind it, but still seeing through the mountain. Who's creating that hologram from your understanding?
I think it's inner Earth beings to start with. They say a lot of things. They have a lot of different beings. They say that are present on the ranch. Arcturians, Syrians, things like that. But in reality, I think that maybe where I saw this holographic mountain was actually a mountain range next to Mount Adams that they call Sleeping Lady. Okay. And the first thing when I actually got on that property and went to that part of the field of dreams, and looked over and looked at this thing, I kept thinking interterrestrial city. Like there's a city in there. Okay. And I think that maybe you've got some type of a... The reason why I say this is this, okay? We're going to go left with this. But look.
Let's go left.
I've been talking about this, and you brought up holograms, all right? I'm convinced there's something out there. The first night I was out there this time, it's about, we're doing the sky watch, they call it. Excuse me, but I'm looking through, a guy named John Bertoli's, the light language guy. I'm looking through his binoculars. They're not infrared. They're just good ones. But I can see where around the area that James Gilliam says is a dimensional door. On the side of that is like a pyramid type of thing you can see in the snow. It's just rock formation. But I could see these lights in there. That honestly, it looked like a disco light. It was so odd. I watched this for like an hour. Other people were watching it. I could say, you see it? And to me, it looked like some type of a processor. And then watch this group of people out there, a good group was out there, but start really trying to project their intent and wishing for things, and then start having encounters. Whether if it's just skywatch, like one gentleman, Costas, he had everybody pull the energy from the ground through the group, and then project it into the sky and ask for ships to show up. And he got 38. Wow. During the Skywatch. That's incredible. That is. I was forced to do one. I've never done one before. I got 18. I was happy like that. I wouldn't have done it, so that would have been embarrassing. Anyway.
Yeah, it's like no pressure.
Those abilities now. Can you get ships to show up?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Just to cross your fingers.
But on the serious, and a lot of people go out there thinking about Yetis and Sasquatch, and then they wind up having an encounter. Yeah. Or there's 3 feline beings out there, and they'll have some type of a telepathic contact, and something will happen. There's things that will happen out there. You'll see something that will keep the consciousness going forward. And I swear there's some type of a mechanism out there. If we go back to the civilizations that used to be on Earth, that is, I think, scanning maybe our soul life memories, our mental, our mind, and then it's producing some type of a orb that produces a holographic projection for us of some type. I think that's what it is. Wow. I really do, because I did a video over I don't know if you saw it, the shapeshifter, the squirrel I encountered before I left.
I did see that. I
was out there this time, and outside seeing that light and meeting a lot of people, I said, man, this time I got out of here with no world-blowing perception things happening. And then the day before I left.
Of course, right?
The conference was over. And when the conference is over, things started getting very strange for me out there. I myself had some type of an encounter with something I would say was a Sasquatch of some type, a shapeshifter. Both times I was out there, I was getting definite communications.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, there are others. So many people go out there and have something like that happen. That makes you wonder how much of this is actually real or how much of it is something designed to keep our consciousness going. Mm-hmm. And I think Mount Shasta is the same way. I think it seems to have the same effect on people. Some type of a device within that mountain that is producing something. A lot of people say they think they hear Sasquatch out around those cabins out there stomping around. In reality, that's infrasound. Infrasound would be connected to an inner earth operation.
Well, I think the whole idea of mountains, if you think of the shape of the mountain and what can be underneath the mountain, it's very interesting. Even though it's a supposedly natural structure, it is sort of pyramidal in shape and that kind of thing. I have a relative that was at ECETI last summer, and that relative had a Yeti. Well, probably a Yeti encounter. Yeah, which is very humorous and frightening for her because it was on the newer end of experiences for her. So, but there was humor involved, which is that's a good sign, I think, if there's humor there. So for the shape-shifting, for anyone that wants to hear more about Barry's work and his observations and his thoughts, he does have a YouTube channel. And his name is Barry, Barry. His last name is Littleton, Littleton. So if you do a search on YouTube, you can come up and find his channel. And so he's got a lot of great 10-minute clips that you can watch. I definitely recommend that. So Barry, we're kind of getting close to wrapping up. Did you want to talk a little bit about anything that you're working on in the present moment, any projects, any writings, anything like that you wish to share? Just kind of where you're at with that?
Sure. I've got the YouTube channel as one. I've also got BarryLittleton.com, which is a website I put up about a month ago that I need to get a better web designer than the primitive knowledge I have to help me with. And I'm trying to connect everything through there. I was working on it. Initially started on a book, and I had scrapped the idea. I thought that maybe I had done enough, and I was going to try to not do much more of this, but in reality, people actually want me to write it, so I'm going to try to finish that up and do that and put that out just to assist anyone that might be having contact. I can't answer all their questions, but if we can share more things, at least we can start figuring it out, because I think right now, if you put us all together, we don't really still know anything. Yeah,
I know. It's a big process. But it is. It's good. People are starting to come together, and some people because of your work. So really appreciate that. We do have time maybe to hear about one or two more experiences that you've had that you feel have really expanded your consciousness. If you can think of any off the top of your head, which I'm sure you can.
Sure. One would be I'm about to do a video on that one, so I probably shouldn't talk about that. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Another one would be, what I call adult onset experiences.
Okay.
Which is where I had actually was with my ex-girlfriend, and I was actually trying to have fun. So we went out in the country to do some meditation to raise our kundalini, and during this is when a ship came up during the meditation, and the telepathic contact happened, and then suddenly I was kind of sitting there, and 4 hours is gone. You know what I mean?
Missing time.
And then after that, I could still see. I knew information had been given to me, but it starts being flinted. It's fleeting after the encounter itself. And then also I could see some technology. I could see some beings. You know what I mean? But I couldn't remember everything that happened. That's not nearly enough for that type of missing time. And I had actually with her, I had 3 experiences where we're missing about 4.5 hours of time each time. So those would be ones that were really impacting. And for me, when I was younger, having these different experiences and things, the truth is I didn't think, but what if I had some type of a brain chemical problem and I was, insane or hallucinogenic, maybe.
Right.
Who knows, but I didn't think so. But then again, if I was crazy, I probably would have been the last one to know. So
I know exactly. That old catch-22. Do you recall after the experiences, or even actually during these experiences, what it felt like to be in your body?
Yeah, I was going to say real quick.
Oh, sure.
Her being there was validation that I wasn't delusional.
Yeah, that can help. Yes.
Share.
Absolutely.
Okay, now your next question was like to after the experience yourself.
Either during the experience or afterwards. What did it feel like to be in your body? Did you have any physical experience that was altered?
Yeah, no. Most of the experiences I described are physical. So for me, the main thing I would say is being on board the crafts itself, and several of them made me feel this way. Is what they call temporal aphasia, which is caused by the temporal distortment, the fact that the dimensions are like the inside and outside of that craft are not the same dimension. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Now that you can see it here, the inside is not the same dimension, and there's a different oxygen in there, and it made me very sick. It's like motion sickness plus not being able to breathe very good. So that is, even worse than, I think, motion sickness, because after a while, it starts getting hard to think straight.
Oh, sure.
So that's one thing I would say physically that I definitely encountered was that. Okay, the temporal aphasia. That'd be one. Another thing I think after the encounters, after being sit back, I always felt really elated afterwards.
Okay.
And trying to really remember everything that happened and trying to almost obsessing trying to remember. Those would be two things that come.
Were you able to sleep, or was it like several days of not being able to sleep at all, or did anything like that happen?
Since childhood, I don't sleep with the dark. Because at night, I don't sleep very good. So that's that was always. But this thing was, I would say, maybe a day after the encounter, 2 days after, it was kind of a melancholy that followed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like, kind of depressing, because then you got to go back to your normal life.
Yeah.
You can't tell nobody about it. They're not going to believe you. They may lock you up.
Sure. Yeah, it's isolating. Sure. It can be an isolating feeling. Yeah. Any last words before we finish the podcast?
No, I just hope I stayed with you on the interview. I feel like
you did. No, it was great.
Not saying okay.
Going left is good. It's great. No, it's good to hear. I think that all the tangents were extremely appropriate and really great. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And hopefully I'll have this going for a while. And if you ever feel like you want to join me again, that would be wonderful. I could even maybe do some kind of a round table with you and Peter or something like that. That might be fun. I've listened to a few of your interviews with him, and they're pretty fun. So, yeah.
I got to meet him in person last year. He's everything he appears to be.
Oh,
really
good.
Cool.
That's great. That's wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much, Barry.
Thank you for having me.